Gus Lamont, just a young boy with a bright smile, went missing on September 27th from his family's remote Oak Park station in South Australia. The last confirmed sighting was around 5 p.m, when his grandmother, Shannon and Murray, saw him playing near a mound of sand outside the homestead. What followed was an exhaustive search effort. Police combed the area, the army joined the operation, and even the state emergency service scoured the terrain. Aerial searches, waterway inspections, and ground patrols covered miles of the surrounding property. But despite all this, no trace of Gus has ever been found. Not a footprint beyond the one lone print matching his boot. Not a piece of clothing. Not a clue. Nothing. It's the kind of disappearance that immediately raises questions. How can a child vanish from a property that, while remote, is still inhabited and monitored by family? How can every conceivable search fail to turn up a single clue? And most importantly, are there details everyone has overlooked? Small but critical facts that could unlock the mystery. This case isn't just about what we know, it's about what we don't know. And often, in disappearances like Gus's, the answers are hidden in plain sight, obscured by assumptions and dismissed details. To truly understand what might have happened, we need to carefully examine the overlooked facts, analyse the environment of Oak Park Station, and challenge the conventional theories that have dominated the media. Today, we're going to dive into these elements, step by step. From the overlooked features of the land to the hidden moments in the family timeline. From unlikely animal theories to the critical clues everyone missed. This is the story of Gus Lamont, and why the answers remain frustratingly out of reach. From the very beginning, the disappearance of Gus Lamont sparked wild speculation. Social media and news outlets were quick to suggest that he might have been taken by dingoes, attacked by wild pigs, carried off by an eagle, or even swept away by some other natural force. But when you look closely at the environment around Oak Park Station, these theories quickly fall apart. First, the dingoes. While dingoes have been implicated in some past child disappearances in Australia, the area surrounding Oak Park Station is largely inhospitable to them. Sheep farmers routinely control the population, often shooting dingoes on site to protect livestock. Simply put, there aren't enough wild dogs roaming that region to make this a likely scenario. Wild pigs, another common theory, are also unlikely. Pigs can cause serious damage, but they tend to leave visible signs. Disturbed soil, broken branches, or traces of a struggle. In Gus's case, nothing like that was ever found. There was no evidence suggesting an animal attack, and the absence of clothing or physical marks makes it nearly impossible for a wild pig to have been involved. What about birds of prey, like eagles? While it may sound shocking, the size of a young child like Gus makes this nearly impossible. Eagles in the area can carry small animals, but a 5-year-old is far too heavy. There would also likely be evidence, claw marks, feathers, or signs of struggle, but nothing like that exists. Even more natural hazards, such as water or dangerous terrain, are unlikely. Crocodiles, for instance, are restricted to northern Australia, hundreds of kilometres away. The southern landscape around Yanta and Oak Park Station is largely dry, open land with few natural traps capable of capturing a child without leaving a trace. The conclusion is clear. These popular animal theories, while dramatic and attention-grabbing, are distractions. They pull focus from what really matters, the human factors and the overlooked details of the station itself. Every minute spent entertaining the idea of a wild animal abduction takes attention away from critical investigative work. To get closer to the truth, we must leave behind the sensational explanations and focus on the evidence, or the lack thereof, at Oak Park Station. Only then can we start to piece together the real possibilities of what happened to Gus Lamont. To understand what might have happened to Gus Lamont, we need to examine the family timeline carefully, because sometimes the smallest daily routines can create critical windows where tragedy strikes. Gus was last seen around 5 p.m, playing in a mound of sand on Oak Park Station, under the watch of his grandmother, Shannon Murray. This wasn't a quick glance or brief moment. Shannon was inside the homestead preparing dinner and simultaneously keeping an eye on Gus's 1-year-old sibling, Ronnie. Managing both children while preparing a meal, whether it was a quick sandwich or a more involved roast, creates moments of distraction. Meanwhile, Gus's parents, Josh and Jessica Lamont, were away with the herd of sheep, roughly 10 kilometres from the main homestead. Their absence means that the usual parental supervision was not present. And while Oak Park Station is vast and open, with little natural cover for a child to disappear into unnoticed, this distance between the parents and Gus meant that there was a significant reliance on the grandmother for supervision, a reliance that, while understandable, leaves questions about the timing and supervision gaps. Josie Murray, another grandparent figure at the property, was also occupied, tending to other tasks on the farm. The daily operations of a sheep station are physically demanding and time-sensitive. While everyone had responsibilities, the simultaneous need to manage livestock, household duties, and young children could have created a brief but critical period when Gus was unattended, even for a few minutes. Another overlooked element is the mounds of sand themselves. Gus was reportedly playing on a particular mound, but there were actually multiple sand mounds near the homestead. How long had the mound been there? Was it freshly formed, or had it been in use for days? These details may seem minor, but they could determine the plausibility of different scenarios, whether he was playing alone, with another child, or near other structures that could provide cover. From an investigative standpoint, these small, everyday moments matter. They shape the timeline of events, define who had access to Gus, and identify where gaps in supervision could have occurred. Understanding exactly when he was last seen, who was in the immediate vicinity, and how the household dynamics were functioning that afternoon is essential. It allows investigators, and in our analysis, viewers, to focus on realistic possibilities rather than wild speculation. The key takeaway here is that the disappearance didn't happen in a vacuum. It occurred within a structured environment with routines, responsibilities, and minor distractions that, in the right or wrong circumstances, could become crucial. Paying attention to these overlooked moments allows us to frame the mystery not as a sensationalist event, but as a real-world puzzle grounded in the dynamics of a family farm. By reconstructing this family timeline, we see that the last known moments of Gus's life were not chaotic, but subtle and nuanced. And it is often in these subtle details, the ones everyone assumes are trivial, that the answers to disappearances like this are hidden. To understand Gus Lamont's disappearance, we can't just focus on people and timelines. The environment itself plays a huge role. Oak Park Station is not just a farm. It's a sprawling property with multiple structures, sand mounds, reservoirs, wooded areas, and other features that, at first glance, might seem irrelevant, but could hold critical clues. First, the sand mounds. Reports indicate that Gus was playing on one, but there were at least 2 prominent mounds near the homestead. This raises the question, which mound was he actually on? Was one mound newer or disturbed recently? Small details like this can influence theories about his movements, who could have approached him unnoticed, and where evidence might be found. Even a few steps in the wrong direction could create footprints or disturbances that are easily overlooked in a vast, sandy environment. Next, the secondary structures on the property. Oak Park Station isn't just a single house. There are multiple buildings, including smaller structures near the sand mounds. Who lived or worked in these buildings? Were they occupied at the time? For instance, understanding the layout of rooms, entrances and sightlines can clarify how someone could have accessed the areas where Gus was playing, or whether he could have wandered close to them. Even seemingly minor details like a satellite dish, a chimney, or a storage area may indicate areas where people regularly go, which could provide insight into potential routes and access points. Then there's the round cement reservoir located behind the homestead. It looks like a typical farm water storage, but was it operational? Did it contain water at the time? Most importantly, was it searched properly during the initial investigation? These small reservoirs can create blind spots in searches. Even a child-sized area could be hidden if investigators overlook it or fail to search thoroughly. Wooded areas and other parts of the property also matter. Some areas appear untouched, while others have small anomalies. Patches of discoloured sand, disturbed soil, or subtle depressions. On a property this size, minor details like these can be extremely significant. They may indicate recent digging, footprints, or movement that went unnoticed. Finally, there's the question of human activity. Who maintains these areas? Who uses which parts of the property daily? Every structure, mound, and wooded patch is part of a living, breathing environment. Understanding these patterns is crucial to determine how someone could approach or interact with Gus without being seen. Investigators often focus on obvious signs, but in many cases, it's the overlooked, subtle details of the environment that hold the keys to solving a disappearance. By mapping out these features and asking the right questions, we begin to uncover the hidden obstacles that no one else is talking about. The layout, the mounds, the reservoirs, and the wooded areas aren't just background scenery. They could define the last movements of Gus and help narrow down where evidence might be found. Understanding Oak Park Station's environment isn't just about geography, it's about possibilities. Each structure, mound, or anomaly tells a story of how this disappearance could have happened and who might have had access to the child. These are the overlooked aspects that, when pieced together, start forming a clearer picture of that tragic afternoon. When analysing Gus Lamont's disappearance, there are three critical assumptions that, surprisingly, many people overlooked in early reporting. Understanding these assumptions is essential to see the case clearly, separate fact from speculation, and focus on realistic scenarios. Assumption 1. Gus is very likely deceased. This is a hard reality to face, but it is a statistical and investigative consideration. According to retired Victoria Police Detective Charlie Bazina, while police have done everything possible to locate Gus, the likelihood of survival diminishes sharply with time, especially in remote, harsh environments like Oak Park Station. The area isn't just sparsely populated, it's isolated, open, and exposed to the elements. The fact that weeks have passed without any trace, no clothing, no footprints, no signs of wandering, supports the grim probability that Gus is no longer alive. This assumption doesn't point to foul play by itself, but it sets the stage for why we must look critically at human involvement rather than natural causes or wandering accidents. Assumption 2. Foul play is extremely likely. Wild animals, wandering off, or accidental drowning have been largely ruled out. Dingoes are rare in this region due to the 1,600-mile dog fence. Crocodiles don't inhabit the southern part of Australia, and eagles or wild pigs are incapable of carrying off a child without leaving physical evidence. There's no sign of a struggle, no abandoned clothing, and no trace in the surrounding terrain. With natural explanations so unlikely, the reality is that a human being, someone who knew the property and could manoeuvre unnoticed, must be considered a primary suspect. Assumption 3. The perpetrator is likely familiar with the property. Remote properties like Oak Park Station are not easily accessible. Strangers are far less likely to enter unnoticed, especially when locals or family members are around. This means that anyone who could abduct or harm Gus probably had intimate knowledge of the land, the routines, and the placement of structures and sand mounds. Understanding who had access, who knew the property layout, and who could navigate the area without leaving obvious traces becomes critical. Taken together, these assumptions shift the focus away from random events or environmental causes and place it squarely on human action. This perspective isn't meant to accuse, but to highlight where investigative energy should go. By ignoring these assumptions, early speculation distracted from the real possibilities, allowing time and critical evidence to slip away unnoticed. Finally, these assumptions help frame how we analyse the absence of evidence. In Gus's case, the lack of physical clues isn't a sign of nothing happening. It's a sign of how cleverly, tragically, evidence can disappear in remote, sandy terrain, especially when foul play is involved. Investigators must treat the absence itself as a piece of evidence. It informs us about timing, access, and the type of person who could have committed such an act. By keeping these three assumptions at the forefront, we start to see the case in a sharper, more strategic light. It's no longer about wild guesses or improbable theories. It's about a tragic, calculated event that left behind almost nothing, demanding careful analysis of every overlooked clue. One of the most overlooked aspects of Gus Lamont's disappearance is the role of his grandmother, Shannon Murray, and the critical moments leading up to his vanishing. While early reports focused on wild animals, strangers, and general speculation, investigators and the public alike initially missed a simple but crucial fact. Shannon was the last person to see Gus alive. On the afternoon of September 27th, Gus was playing in a mound of sand at Oak Park Station, under Shannon's supervision. At the time, his mother Jessica and grandfather Josie were occupied 10 kilometres away with the sheep herd. Meanwhile, Shannon was inside the homestead, attending to other responsibilities, preparing a meal and looking after Gus's younger sibling, Ronnie. This seemingly ordinary domestic activity creates a small but critical window in which something tragic could occur. The timing here is key. Gus was last seen around 5:00 p.m, and by the time anyone realised he was missing, precious hours had already passed. Early reporting only briefly mentioned Shannon's presence, but the details of what she was doing, meal preparation, caring for Ronnie, moving between tasks, weren't emphasised. These mundane actions matter. They provide context for when Gus could have been out of direct supervision and how a potential abductor could have acted without immediate detection. Another overlooked point is the exact location. Oak Park Station isn't just open land, it has multiple mounds of sand, secondary structures, and a wooded area nearby. Reports now clarify that Gus may have been playing on a different mound than initially thought, which complicates the timeline and search efforts. Questions arise. Which mound did Shannon see him on? Could a small displacement have gone unnoticed in those critical minutes? Even more, we now understand the family dynamics better. Shannon, as the matriarch, held significant authority over the station and the household routines. Her attention was divided, balancing meal preparation, care for other children, and managing property responsibilities. In missing person cases, the last known contact often becomes the most critical focus for investigators. It's not about blame, it's about reconstructing the timeline with precision. The combination of location, and responsibilities is the key clue everyone missed. By focusing on Shannon's perspective, we begin to understand the precise window in which Gus disappeared. The small details, what she was cooking, whether she stepped outside, how long she was distracted, are no longer trivial. They are essential pieces of the puzzle. This analysis also highlights a broader lesson in missing child investigations. The last person to see the child is often central to reconstructing events. Not because they are a suspect, but because they provide the most accurate snapshot of where the child was and what circumstances could have allowed for a disappearance. By now, it's clear that to understand Gus Lamont's vanishing, we must pay attention to the moments everyone initially overlooked. Shannon's actions and the timing of her supervision aren't just background. They could hold the answers that search parties and investigators need to pursue further leads. With Gus Lamont's disappearance, one of the most critical questions that investigators and the public must ask is, who had the opportunity and access to Oak Park Station at the time he vanished? At first glance, some might immediately think of strangers, people passing through, or outsiders with malicious intent. But the reality of this case, when analysed carefully, points to a very small, contained population and the high likelihood that someone familiar with the property may have been involved. The station is located near Yanta, a tiny town with around 60 residents. This is not a bustling community. Everyone more or less knows each other, and most have routine patterns. In a case like this, each resident could theoretically be accounted for. Their whereabouts, their movements, and their relationships to the Lamont family or Oak Park Station can be scrutinised. Investigators often focus on outsiders first, but in such a close-knit remote area, strangers are limited, and their access is restricted. Now consider the station itself. It has multiple structures, sand mounds, a round cement reservoir, and wooded areas. The property layout is something a stranger would struggle to navigate unnoticed. Anyone unfamiliar with the station's nuances, where the children usually play, where the entrances and exits are, and which areas are under supervision, would risk being seen immediately. This is why proximity and familiarity matter. Family members or those close to the household naturally had more freedom to move within these areas. They knew where Gus might be playing, when supervision might lapse, and what times adults were distracted by chores or tending to livestock. This doesn't automatically implicate anyone. It simply defines who realistically had opportunity. In many missing child cases, investigators often revisit the last known contact timeline. History shows that the last person to see a missing child or someone who had unrestricted access to the environment is frequently central to solving the case. At the same time, we cannot ignore outsiders entirely. Even in a small town like Yanta, visitors, contractors, or temporary workers could have gained access. Interviews and alibis are critical. Investigators need to know exactly who was in the area, what they were doing, and whether anyone had unexplained gaps in their timeline. Criminal records, prior interactions with the property, and motives all become relevant pieces of the puzzle. The key here is strategic reasoning. By systematically evaluating the potential suspects, strangers versus those familiar with the property, investigators can focus search efforts and questioning where it matters most. It's also a cautionary lesson for the public. Speculation about random strangers often diverts attention from more plausible explanations based on opportunity, familiarity, and access. Ultimately, the question of stranger versus family or close contacts frames how the case should proceed. It highlights the importance of small details. Who moved within the property during critical windows? Who had knowledge of routines? And who could exploit brief lapses in supervision? It is this level of scrutiny, focusing on what might seem like mundane daily movements, that often cracks cases where evidence is otherwise scarce. Looking at the Gus Lamont case, the pattern becomes painfully clear. Small, overlooked details hold the key. From the sand mounds where he was playing to the secondary structures, the round cement reservoir, and the small anomalies around Oak Park Station, there are elements of the environment that were either missed or misunderstood in the early days of the investigation. These features may seem minor to the casual observer, but in a disappearance like this, they could be pivotal. Critical questions remain. Who exactly had access during the critical window? How long was Gus truly unattended? Did the layout of the station create blind spots that no one considered? Could small details, like the discoloured patch of sand or the second mound, point to something larger that escaped early searches? These aren't just questions for investigators. They are the type of questions we, as observers analysing the case, need to consider. Another factor is the absence of evidence itself. Normally, footprints, clothing, or signs of struggle guide police. But in this case, these clues are almost completely missing. The lack of physical evidence doesn't mean nothing happened. Rather, it highlights the importance of strategic reasoning and reconstruction. Every action, every movement, every seemingly minor decision by those in charge of supervision matters. Finally, this case reminds us of the human element. It's not just terrain, animals, or weather patterns. It's the people who were there, the patterns they followed, and the moments they may have overlooked. Whether it's a stranger who briefly accessed the property or someone within the family circle, the key lies in piecing together timelines, behaviours, and environmental cues that others may dismiss as unimportant. As we step back, it's clear. The truth about Gus Lamont may still be hidden in plain sight. The case challenges us to look deeper, think critically, and question assumptions. It's a reminder that in missing person cases, the smallest overlooked details, the subtle footprints, the tiny disturbances, the unrecorded movements, can ultimately reveal the most profound answers. So the question remains, are we asking the right questions? Are we truly considering all overlooked angles? Until more information emerges, these questions guide our understanding, and perhaps one day, the answers will bring closure to a family that has waited far too long.